it's just a huge honor for me today to be podcast interviewing David James, CPA, founder and CEO of REALscore, with 33 years of executive experience as a CPA, CEO, CFO, which is a chief financial officer, and strategic consultant to companies and individuals. He is an entrepreneur and expert in startups, as well as a dental industry strategic and visionary leader whose mission is to educate and help dentists of all ages and specialties achieve success through location strategy and to have a direct and significant impact on companies that provide products, services, and advise them. And, every single time I ever meet a dentist who buys a practice, I say, well, did you spend the money and get any demographics in this area? And he says, no. And
Right.
It's like, well, dude, if demographics don't matter, why didn't you go to North Korea? Why didn't you go to Afghanistan? Why didn't you go to the Congo? My first and only question to you is, do demographics matter?
Oh my gosh, Howard. Well, thank you. First of all, thank you. It's an honor to spend time with you, and I appreciate the opportunity to chat with you about this stuff, because what's fascinating, I got involved in this about 6-7 years ago when I had my own CFO consulting firm, and a friend in the dental industry we were just talking, and he was saying how frustrated he was that he knew how important it was to find a good location, but there was no tools, no way to go out there to figure out how to get to that, how to get data that actually could make a difference. And the more I looked into this, to answer your question, is there is no more important issue for any dentist than their location. It's the number one factor that's going to determine how successful they're going to be.
But it's not true, because I saw the movie. If you build it, they will come. You can build a baseball team in the middle of a cornfield.
Yeah, wow, that's amazing how that translates, into and it just depends on, see, with my background. By the way, thank you for that introduction. It's almost like you just made it up all by yourself, and you wrote it off so perfectly there. But what I enjoy doing, because of my background and things like that, is I realize that the industry was focused so much, everything I would see in the industry was focused on dentistry itself and all the things that go into dentistry, and there's a million things out there like that. And what really struck me is when I was checking out, doing my business planning and due diligence, and whether, okay, if I build this website and start this business, does it make any sense? I went to the trade show in Chicago, the big one there. And after walking around for 3 days, I got on the plane and was headed home and realized, you know what? Everybody in this building, there's 20,000 dentists, there's 25,000 vendors, everything like that. And every one of their ultimate success determines on how much volume a dentist does, and what drives that is their location and getting into the right place where there's the least amount of competition, where the demographics are the best. Yet there wasn't one person, no one was demonstrating in that show to cover location. There wasn't one CE class, there wasn't anything dealing with the business of what I call location strategy. And I say that kind of in quotes, because one of my missions is to educate the dental industry, whether it's the dentists themselves, or frankly, it's all the other companies, the lenders, the distributors, the marketers, the brokers that serve those dentists, because every one of those companies' success, how well they succeed, depends on how well the dentist does. So, over time, because my job and what I've done for a living is to go through and analyze businesses, help them think strategically, how to grow, how to get smarter, how to do it, the right way, is figured out that what was really missing from my standpoint was this whole discussion about location strategy and what that meant. And I've got, I could talk for 4 hours on this stuff, but the location strategy and the big picture wise, you mentioned the term demographics. Okay, in the industry, when people say demographics in the industry, what I've found is that that's an all-encompassing term for a lot of things. But most people, when they think demographics, they're thinking like, okay, household income and population numbers and stuff like that. But what I like to do is to separate, something called, the market saturation and the competition from the demographics, because to me, that's a whole other discussion, because I know you guys have talked about it ad nauseum, the ratio of practitioners to population in an area and how much that affects, whether you should go into that market and all those kind of things. So what we've done is we've kind of separated the whole competition market saturation analysis from the demographics analysis, because look, at a high level, I got a lot of people that say they want to do demographic reports on an area, but yet if you look at, we have a process we go through and we help dentists sort of figure out, okay, where to best locate my practice. And in my humble opinion, I think that the competition density in terms of the ratio that we're talking about has a little bit higher of importance than the demographics, which is just, the basic income, age breakdown, things like that. Because at a high level, it's like, okay, you can have great demographics, okay, but if you're going into an area where the ratio is 1,500 to 1, when we know that 2,000 to 1 is saturated, then you're going to struggle. You better have a really strong business plan that covers a lot of marketing and a lot of cash flow and a lot of reduced expectations on what your growth is going to be, because you physically have to compete against so many other people, right? But on the other hand, if you go somewhere where and we're finding these all over the country where ratios are 4, 5, 6,000 to 1, okay, and then you find those areas where the demographics make sense, then you've hit a home run, because you're strategically going into an area where that there's not much competition, but yet the demographics all check out, as opposed to doing demographics and then praying that the competition makes sense. Does that make sense? You know what I'm saying there?
Yes, absolutely.
So that's why.
So what is the dentist population ratio for the whole country of America?
We, for a general dentist, on average, based upon the studies that we've done, for the whole country, that's a good question. I don't really know exactly what that number is. I could run it, but it's never been that relevant to me, because no dentist is ever going to worry about that. Okay, so we're looking at what it is going to be in their specific areas that they want to do. Now, what I do know is that it's been accepted in the industry, and we've proven it, that a ratio of 2,000 to 1 is considered a saturated market. Okay, and that number can be interpreted a lot of different ways. If you're a startup, then that number tells you that, okay, you're going into an area, and if you're another dentist in that area, then you're going to have to fight to cannibalize patients from somebody else, more than likely. Okay, if you're looking at buying a practice and you're in an area where it's 2,000 to 1, depending upon how your patient breakdown is and stuff like that, that may not be as bad. So half the battle is taking the data, and then what we specialize in is knowing how to interpret it and help dentists make good strategic decisions up front, rather than having to make a bad decision up front and then spend the next 10, 20 years trying to climb out of it once they buy a building or sign a 10-year lease or something like that. So we're trying to avoid those mistakes before they even happen.
Yeah, and they come out of dental school $350,000 in debt. Then how much is your REALscore.com report?
Well, we have really, let's take that scenario. If you're we have a lot of kids coming out of school that want to start a practice, but even under that scenario, a lot of times we deal with these associates that have been honing their skills for a few years, and then they want to go start their own practice. Okay, so we have really 3 main reports. We do a lot of different things, but the 3 main reports that we do are a location search report, where we go through and analyze it. Let's say I want to live within, I want to start a practice within a 45-minute drive time of downtown Phoenix. Okay, the location search report, what we do is we'll take that whole area, that whole drive time area, 45 minutes in every direction, and analyze which census blocks within that 45-minute drive time search area has the best ratios. Now, let me explain what that process is, because this is really important. If there's nothing else that the listeners take from this is to understand this concept, because when I say census blocks, I always ask people if they understand what that is, and 9 times out of 10, they have no idea what I'm talking about. Okay, and this is in contrast to a lot of people that get reports by zip codes. Okay, a zip code, we all know, has very irregular shapes. They're kind of different sizes, different, they could be massive, they could be small, things like that. But when you're looking at a zip code report and you want to say, look at say, a 3-mile radius from the center of that zip code or a 10-minute drive time, because those borders are so weird. If you're just looking at the zip code in that particular spot, you could, within 2 minutes away, you could be at a boundary and have a whole cluster of practices or population things that are in your market that won't show up on a zip code report. So to me, a zip code report is really dangerous. A census block is the U.S. Census Bureau, way back when they started doing this, they've broken the country down into, don't quote me on this, around 216,000 little individual tiny pieces, okay? And in a typical suburban area, a census block might be 1 or 2 square blocks. So it's very, very small chunks of data. So when we go do and this concept applies to every report that we do, because it's done by census block. So let's say I want to go do this search in a 45-minute area. And what we do then is, there's probably in Phoenix, I'm going to say a couple thousand different census blocks. So what we will do is look at every one of those census blocks, and for each one, we pick both data for a radius and a drive time. Okay, and there's strategic reasons for that, because it gives us 2 sets of data. The radius is designed to give an idea of what the market for that practice would be within a reasonable distance from if you put a practice there, okay? The drive time is designed to approximate what the market for that entire practice would be. So, and we define that as, okay, what's the reasonable distance a new patient, if they didn't know you from anyone, if they saw your ad or saw you online or something like that, how far would they drive if they didn't know you at all? Okay, and in most places nowadays, there's so many dentists out there that, most people aren't going to drive more than 10 or 12 minutes to a dentist anymore, because, unless they know somebody, or it's because it's become more commoditized and stuff like that. So what this location search report does is we analyze all the different census blocks. Every block is analyzed using, say, a 3-mile radius and a 15-minute drive time. We accumulate all that data, and then we provide the top 20 areas within that whole search area that have the highest competition ratios. And then we do something no one else does, is we filter that by household income. So, in other words, let's say someone wants to practice in Phoenix like that, but they want to make sure they're in an area where the average household income is at least $75,000. So not only are we providing them the areas where there's the least amount of competition, but they also know, before they even look at demographics, that at minimum the average household income is $75,000.
And the average,
that's huge.
Median household income for the whole country is like 48,000. Is it still?
Right.
So
I think it's like 54. I think I read the other day it's like 54 or something.
Is it,
but yeah,
past 50?
Yeah, it went past 50. I think.
So if the average house in America is 50 and you're at 75, that's a whole quartile bump up.
Right, but this is a real game changer, because, like I said, with that process that we go through to help people find the right location, we're cutting months and months and months of just driving around, and figuring that out, because within a few days we can run this report, and people are going to know what are the top 20 areas within their search area that have the best competition ratio, and they already know, without looking at all the detailed demographics like age breakdown and all that kind of stuff. They know that at minimum, if their ideal patient is someone that is higher income, they know that area already has 75,000 or higher. And we can make that 60, we can make that 50, we can adjust that to whatever makes sense for that particular area. So that's a extremely powerful report.
And how much is that report?
It is, depending upon the distance that you are looking for, but like a 30-minute drive time report is like $749.
But that was my first comment about being by student loan deal. They graduate $350,000 in debt, and then they won't spend $750 on going in the right place. This is the absolute.
I mean, if you follow our process, okay, you may pay for a location search report, and then you may end up doing what we call and then because the process is basically, once you identify, a lot of people go out and they fall in love with a location, and then they come to us and say, what are the demographics and competition, and hope that it works out. That only does about 5% of the time. So the right process is, first of all, you identify the big area you'd like to look in. We do this location search report. We come back with like the top 20 areas. Then you go through and identify which out of those, narrow that down to 3 or 4. okay, based upon, okay, quality of life, the right kind of schools, do you see yourself living here, things like that. And then you do a deep dive on the demographics, okay? Well, we do a demographic report that has 19 different variables. We provide data both on the drive radius and drive time, like we talked about, and we also provide current and 5-year forecast data, all for $199. It's the best deal in dentistry. Okay,
So
so in
that's
other
the
words,
second report. First is the location search for
right?
$749, and the
Yep,
second one is called a what?
it's a comprehensive demographic report.
And that's 199.
199. Yep,
So there's 750 and 200,
yep,
and yeah.
and that's before their 15% Townie Perks discount. Don't forget to throw that in there.
And
So-
thanks for doing that. And the reason I like the Townie Perks is because the dentist has to wear too many hats. So I think that their elders should help them make quicker, faster decisions on disability insurance, getting a credit card processor, getting demographics. We're just trying to make it faster, easier, higher quality.
You got that right.
Cost.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and then the third report we do is kind of a hybrid of the two. Let's say somebody says, well, you know what, I think I've done enough work where I don't need the location search report, but I have either a practice I want to do due diligence on, or I have an area that I think is going to work. So the third main one is called a practitioner and demographic report, where basically it's all the demographics, and then it's also the ratio data. So instead of doing the whole location search thing, we'll give them the competition ratios for not just general dentists, but all of the specialists and things like that. So, and again, it's really 4 sets of data, because it's current data, it's 5-year forecast data, and then we do everything by looking at the radius, like say a 3-mile radius, to get an idea what it would be like in close proximity to that office, and then usually a 12 to 15-minute drive time to approximate what the entire market would be. It is, and the key thing is, I cannot emphasize this enough, it's by census block, not zip codes. So it ignores all geographic boundaries, all those fake boundaries that are out there, mail routes, zip codes, all those things are irrelevant, because when someone's going to drive to your office, they're not going to care if they have to go over a zip code line. You're right?
Right, but
So,
I have noticed that
yeah.
demographics can be misleading if you don't pay attention to rivers, freeways, big parks that take a long
Yeah.
time to drive around.
Yep.
Like I am very close to another zip code, but we're separated by a park that goes from 48th Street to 51st Avenue, and for me to bicycle around it takes me 3 hours and it's 42 miles. Nobody's
Right.
going to drive around that mountain. And
Right.
freeways and rivers are very psychological.
Yeah.
I've noticed a lot of people say, "Well, I don't want to cross I-10." Like, but do you,
It's the other side of it's literally the other side of the tracks. Yeah.
do you believe that freeways and rivers affect
Yes.
behavior?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's the beauty, because one of the things that, if I can back up for a second to give everybody how we're doing this, is that one of the things I noticed when I was getting into this is that most of the time when you ordered a report, it took 2 weeks to come. It took forever to get there. And you had to identify up front, okay, you had to pick a spot and hope you guessed right. Okay. And so what we did is we developed we spent a ton of money to develop this web platform, and, to make it so it's accessible on the internet, so we can, it gives us a ton of flexibility and speed. So what we've done is we've combined the best demographic data you can get, okay, the best practitioner database you can get. We've interfaced it with Google Maps, okay, which sounds easy, but it was incredibly difficult. And then, but that allows us to do all kinds of different searches, like for ring and drive time and 1-3-5 mile radiuses, and especially user drawn maps, where we can actually go onto the screen and draw on the maps and everything. And,
they can find links to all this at your website, REALscore.com.
Yes. So the key then is that, okay, let's say, we have those when we're working with, usually almost every case we actually have, we really believe in customer service. So before most time anybody's ever ordering anything, before they order a location search report, we're actually working with them and figuring out, okay, are there any boundaries like you're talking about that we need to take into account? Or sometimes we have guys that, if it's close to a state line, say, well, I'm licensed in one state, but I'm not the other. So even though that's in the drive time area, carve that out. Okay, that's insanely effective because we can give them, we're not giving them data that's irrelevant. This whole, I wish I could do a a live demo for everybody, because it's incredibly valuable. Because what this allows us to do is, let's say, one of your sons, let's use Ryan for an example because he's a nice kid. Okay, let's say he wants to be a dentist, and he says, okay, I want to practice in Arizona, but I don't know what city. Okay, so I'm not going to go sell him a location search report for all those different cities, because that would be silly. Okay, I don't want to sell him something that he doesn't need. What this allows us to do is do what we're doing now, like an online screen sharing session where we actually physically go on our website and we start playing. And we can pull up competition ratios. We can pull up every demographic piece of data. We can use our mouse and draw user maps around specific areas and skip where boundaries are and stuff like that. It's incredibly effective. And what it does is that, when you're talking about, dentists with all this student loans and things like that, we speed up their location search cycle exponentially, because we're doing it strategically, and we can cut to the chase and get to the right situation, which of course then lenders love that, because they get to close the loans faster, and everybody loves it, because the number one hang up on most cases when you're starting a practice is making the location decision. That can take months and months.
Yeah, and you know what? Everybody always is a victim. Everybody's always done wrong, and it's like, be proactive. I mean, you hear all these young kids say, "Well, I went and got an associate job, and I'm not even busy." It's like, dude, you went to an area where there's a dentist for every 500 people. You could have
Well,
gone out to another area and worked through every lunch and stayed 2 hours after work every day.
I am so glad you brought that up, because, like I said, everything we do has a strategic purpose to it. And I actually wrote an article for Dentaltown a year or two ago about this. But if I'm an associate, okay, and I've talked to a lot of associates and a lot of kids in school and stuff like that, it's like, okay, so many of them, they say, I just want to go get an associate's job somewhere because I need to get the experience, okay? But my recommendation is, do your due diligence on that. Okay, you never know, this thing you might take, you might become a partner there. You may find you may find someone you fall in love with, and you end up living there. You never know in life what's going to happen. You know that as well as I do. So go into this decision strategically, thinking you might be there forever, and do exactly what you're talking about here. It's like, okay, we've had guys that say, I want to go be an associate in Charlotte. Can you tell me the areas that have the highest potential of practices growing, so I know where to search? Okay, we can do that in a heartbeat. We help dentists, we help associates that basically say, okay, look, I want to, just like what you're saying, I got 2 or 3 different options of where I could go. Spend $200 or whatever and figure out which of these practices have the highest chance of growing, which ones are in markets that aren't saturated. And do exactly what you said. Go somewhere where you're going to be busy, in the foreseeable future, where, ask your dentist, show me my business plan. I mean, I would guess that probably 80-90% of the dentists that are out there have been working so hard, they've their heads down, they're taking care of patients and things like that, and they do not have any benchmark data anymore to know what their competition is like and their demographics are like in their current practice. Things change over time. The market changes and things like that, and if you don't know where you stand, then you can't pivot or do what you need to do to grow. And that's what, from an associate standpoint, is, take just a little bit of time and make sure where you're going. Let's say, why not go somewhere that if it continues to grow and you get offered to buy into it, that it actually has a chance of growing and actually adding equity and value, as opposed to what you're saying is going somewhere and twiddling your thumbs.
I've also seen where a dentist will take a quick job out of school with no long-term plan, but end up signing a 5-mile radius restricted covenant. Then when he decides he wants to start his own practice, realizes that where he wants to be is where he took a job. And if he would have known that out of school, he would have taken a job on the other side of town. And now he's got a restricted covenant in the best part of town.
We see it all the time.
So who's your bread and butter client? I mean, you said is it usually kids 2, 3, 4 years out of school. They've been working on their craft. They've been doing a lot of fillings, crowns, and root canals for 3 or 4 years. And is that the kid that's mostly calling you? Who's mostly calling you?
We have so many different types of people calling us that it's kind of hard to rank them. But let me talk about a couple of them. One of them that is very high on the list is exactly what you said. You've got an associate. He's been doing this 2 or 3 years. He wants to kind of on the sly start checking out his options. Okay, he doesn't want, and we help them out a ton because the process that I described earlier allows them very quickly to figure out, number one, okay, is the current practice that I'm at worth investing more time in? If it's not, then okay, then where are the areas that I want to start? If I want to start either buying or starting a practice, the location search that we do is applicable to both because it's going to point out the pockets where either there's the least amount of competition or the pockets where look for a practice that is in those areas so you're not beating your brains out. We actually get a lot of dentists that hear from us through some of our partners, like you guys, especially Bank of America, places like that, where they've been working for a long time, their practice is not growing, it becomes stagnant, and they don't know what to do. So what we're able to help them with is, like I said before, get a baseline of what their current market is, and then we can help them decide, okay, and I'm knowing jumping around a little bit, but one of the big factors that drives this is people whose leases are coming up in the next year or two. Okay, I tell all the lenders, all the distributors, everybody I talk to, that if you don't have in your customer base, if you don't have something in your CRM that says when their lease is coming up, you're missing the boat, because that is a big driver of all these kind of things that I'm talking about. But in that scenario, from an existing practice, he needs to decide, okay, do I stay? Should I invest more money and expand? Add more operatories? Does the market support that? Or has this practice reached its maximum cash value? It's not going to grow anymore. Or should I sell it now while it's at its peak? Or is it a good enough cash cow where I can hire an associate and keep it running? And then, okay, maybe I open up an office 4 or 5 miles away. Or maybe I move my office. Under those scenarios, the only way that you really know whether it makes any sense is if you do the location search study that we talked about, because then we can identify, okay, and that's where you're strategically looking at it from a business planning standpoint, not just kind of winging it. So those are probably two of the main folks that we deal with. The associate looking for a place to go, either to buy. It's the existing dentist, like I talked about before. And the third one is really people that are looking to buy a practice, and they're realizing that, hey, you know what? This is probably, it just amazes me what the practice brokers and a lot of them that are out there that are, they talk about all the things that go into looking at a purchase price. And I frankly probably shouldn't get into this, but this is Dentistry Uncensored, right?
Right. Get into it.
I still don't understand in a lot of ways the ways that dental practices are valued. Coming from the outside 5-6 years ago and looking at it, it's just interesting to me, because the biggest factor that should go into one of the biggest factor that should go into the purchase price is the location strategy. What's the competition like? How much do I got to spend on marketing to grow? What's my patient dispersal look like? All those kind of different things that we can tell people that no one else, well, not no one else, but we do it better than anybody else in terms of being able to effectively do that. So, for example, we have somebody that's looking to buy a practice, and they'll come to us and say, well, what do you think? And we'll do just that demographic and practitioner to population report and give them the ratio for the area, the demographics for the area. And based upon that, if it's a really, really poor ratio, and let's say the ratio is 1,200 to 1 or even, worse than that, then you should be negotiating a cheaper purchase price than what maybe the industry standards would tell you to be, because number one, you need to take that price, that money, and invest that in marketing and other things, because there's so much competition that in order to grow, you're going to have to cannibalize patients from other people. So, in my humble opinion, if those ratios are really poor, you should be getting a discounted purchase price. Same with if the demographics don't make sense and all that kind of stuff. So, so that's the third category, is people where we're helping them do due diligence on practice purchases and making sure that they know what they're getting into, when they take ownership of it.
By the way, his Twitter @REALscore_com, @REALscore_com. I just retweeted. Check out our most popular report with comprehensive demographics and competition date at an affordable $399 report. That article you wrote for Dentaltown, it's a new feature we got, and it's amazing. When you read an article, there's a share button where you can share it. So I just shared it on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Pinterest, Google+. It's called Planting Your Practice, How to Find the Ideal Spot by David James. But yeah, when you read your article online, I mean, some of these articles, it's like calculus and algebra. I mean, nothing's changed since for hundreds of years. But when you go to your article, you can just share it to your social media, and the shares are going up really, really fast since we introduced this deal. And the views on these magazine articles are going off the charts because just like the greatest gift a patient can give of their dentist is a referral friend or loved one. If you read some article and you think this is good information, then reach up there and share it or comment, because when you comment on something, it brings it into today's active topics and puts on top page. You're also
That's awesome.
And by the way, I got to tell you my census block story. You're so right in there. I didn't want to interrupt you. So when I was a junior in dental school, I wrote Phoenix, Arizona, and I asked them for their Census Bureau information, and they sent them from 70, 80, and the 85 mini census, and I was graduating in 87, and I got a 6-foot by 4-foot map, and while everybody was working on their 3-unit PFM bridge, I sent mine to a Crown and Bridge laboratory, and everybody, including the instructors, knew it, and I sat there and traced out the 303 census tracts, because we didn't have computers back here, it was all by hand. And we didn't have computers, so I had a stack of index cards, and I went through and made 303 cards for each one of these deals. And I think the only reason the instructors didn't say, Howard, you have to do your bridge, you can't spend all your time doing that, is because everybody was so fascinated by it, and everybody had never thought about it. And the only reason I knew about it is because my dad had to do that when he was looking for his next location for a Sonic Drive-In hamburger store. And it's just so important, and that's why I've been trying to get you on the show for so long. Big fan of your posts on Dentaltown too. You're so nice on your posts, and you get so much amazing feedback. All you got to do is go to Dentaltown, and I just went on one of them and said I'm actually podcasting him right now. But this is just so important. And what's also funny is you come from two very underutilized sciences. You were also a CFO. Not only do they not get demographics, they don't know any of their numbers. Even the dentists who think they know their numbers and tell you their numbers, then you go in their office and find out so when you're at the study club and the guy next to you says, I got 50% overhead, my labor's 20%, what's the chance he's got the right numbers in his head?
Slim and none.
Yeah, it's like, do follow-up questions. Well, does that include FICA matching? Does that include labor, uniforms, name tags, sending them to CE? They never know their demographics. And then there's also the ethical question about demographics, which is called the greater fool theory, because sometimes you're talking to a dentist and I got to tell them the truth. Say, you know what, maybe there's a fool greater than you, and you should sell this practice and move over to the next town. And then when I get off the phone, you're wondering, is that even morally right? But in the stock market, it's completely right. You see these stock market bubbles. Remember the 94 to March of 2000? You could sell a stock at any price and some idiot would buy it for 6 years. But do you think a lot of dentists would benefit from the greater fool strategy?
Well, yes. We've spent a lot of time in terms of what we do and things like that, of making sure that at the end of the day, we can't be responsible for the choices that they make. Okay. But I've been like I said, a CPA for 30 some years and a CFO and consultant. And what we're trying to do is to guide them. dentists come out of school with amazing technical skills, but you know as well as I do that they don't get much business training, right? And different dentists have different advisors, whether it's their attorney, their CPA, their lender, whatever, their distributor, things like that. So what we're trying to do for the whole industry, let alone the dentists, as well as those advisors and those companies that help them, is to help them make the best decision possible with the best data possible. Okay, and a lot of times, you're right. Okay, it comes down to a business decision where they've never looked at their data. They've been heads down on their practice for 10 years. They don't realize that the whole market around them has changed until they stop and look at the data. Okay. And then, one of the things that we consider really important is we just don't give them a report. We don't email them a report and say, good luck, have a great life. Okay. Everything that we do comes with really, we call it a 20-minute call, but usually they take about an hour because we like to understand and help them dig in and understand their situation and understand the data. I don't care how long it takes. We want to make sure that they know what they're how to interpret it, because that's the key. It's the experience and the customer service to help them interpret the data to make the best decision possible. So getting back to your question is, yes, a lot of times when you look at the practice financials, assuming that they make sense, and you look at the trend, you got to look at what the goals of the dentist are. Is he looking to double in 10 years, or is he looking to retire in 5? Is he on cruise control? All those things kind of factor into it. But a lot of times it comes down to it based upon those factors plus the data. You can recommend that, hey, this has probably reached its best potential, and there's nowhere for it to go but down, because and maybe the time is to sell. Or like I said before, maybe you don't sell it, but now's maybe the time to hire an associate and do the study and say, okay, well, should I either move it, like you said, or should I open up a satellite office, where I go and, spend a day or two in the main office to keep everything moving and spend 2 or 3 days a week in the satellite. There's all those decisions come into play. So that's probably a long-winded answer to your question, but I just believe that, the data and the intangible factors that go into, what lifestyle you want and things like that, all those have to go into play. And, nowadays, I think there are a lot of practices that people would be smart to really take a hard look at, should I sell and move on? And the reason I say that is because we're finding all over the country, there's a general perception that I hear that all the cities and the suburbs are saturated. You need to go into the rural areas and things like that, which is true, by the way. I mean, as a general rule, if you want to grow your practice faster, those are probably the places that you can go and do that faster. But the fallacy of it is that we're finding all over the country that there are pockets within 45 minutes to an hour of downtowns of major cities where we're finding pockets where there's 3, 4, 5 mile radius areas where those ratios are still 3, 4, 5,000 to 1.
Yep.
Okay. But you got to have the data to find it, and you're not going to find that with a zip code search. Okay. You're not going to find that with somebody going and looking in an area and doing concentric circle searches and maybe hitting 21 selection sites when there's 1,500 census blocks within that area that could be potential pocket areas. You know what I mean by that?
Oh yeah.
So,
and also I've watched it for 30 years. I mean, I have dentists that live on this same street as me, in my same zip code, that travel every day 40 minutes north, the North Scottsdale, where there's 49 dentists on every corner, and they're not doing well. And then the other one will drive 40 minutes south out of town and go down to Florence or Maricopa or Eloy, and they're just crushing it. Right. And the guy going out of town is on uncongested freeway, zipping down the street at 75 miles an hour, where the guy driving across town is stopping good traffic. But the other thing that's sad about dentistry is, like, they come out of school $350,000, $400,000 in debt. Hell, for $200,000, you could get an Ace Hardware franchise. And Ace Hardware, have you ever seen 3 Ace Hardwares on the same corner?
No, because they're smart about where they put their
and dentists
locations.
Have never done that. And the ADA could have done it. The local state dental societies could have done it. Patterson, Shine, Benco, Burkhardt. I know you work with Benco, but God, it's so sad because, I mean, demographics is the most important thing. And so my question is, you got 2 boys, I got 4. We both got a boy named Zach. Would you rather your kid come out of school, $350,000 in student loans, or skip 8 years of college and buy a $100,000 Mako America's Body Shop and have perfectly spaced competition, not to mention national advertising? I mean, in fact, that's why my dad, he used to get so mad at me that I was going to college. He wanted me to drop out of high school and start my own Sonic. And his other friends that had lots of Sonics, their kids did, and they made bank. And he said, God, by the time you go through 8 years of college, you could add 5 Sonic drive-ins. And it's all true, but at that time in my life, I just couldn't see myself making hot dogs and hamburgers and onion rings. I wanted to work on teeth, but
got a higher purpose, indeed.
Yeah, but God, you look at a list of these franchises for sale. I mean, if you take the average student loan debt, then say franchises for that amount of money or less, I mean, gosh darn, you must really, really want to be a dentist, because you could have skipped 8 years of school and got some amazing franchises. So if you really wanted to be a dentist like I did, and I do, and I still love dentistry, you got to be a businessman, and you got to have the demographics. And if you think that it's not important, then I wish that you would just go to Afghanistan for 2 years in a startup dental office until you realize that maybe demographics matter. But so when these kids call you, what % of them are even open to the idea of rural? Because most people think it's just as bad to go out into the countryside as it is to Afghanistan.
You know,
I mean, millennials, they got to have their $5 chocolate mocha cafe coffee at Starbucks and their whole grain muffin without genetically modified.
Right. Here's the typical process, is that you're right, a very small percentage of them want to do that, okay? And getting back to your previous point, is that if you're coming out of school with that amount of debt, okay, why wouldn't you make sure that whatever you do, you cannot afford to make a mistake on this next step. So the business planning and the strategy and what you call demographics, I like the term location strategy, because it encompasses competition, demographics, marketing, all those kind of things, because everything eventually gets back to location. So, you know, if I had my way in the industry, I would replace the generic term demographics with location strategy. But back to your example there, what typically happens is when we talk to young kids, whether they're out of school or even the 3-year associates and things like that, you know, they'll say, yeah, I want to live, you know, I don't want to drive more than a half an hour, okay, and I want to be in the suburbs of a city, or, you know, somewhere where I can be close to the nightlife and stuff like that. Well, usually what happens is the data doesn't lie, okay? So we go through and we do this location search for them, and we show them graphically on maps and things like that. Okay, well, here's where the top areas are in terms of the competition and with the household income filter and stuff like that. Here's where you would like to be, okay? So, Mr. Dentist, you have a business decision to make, okay? You could go into an area where you want to for your lifestyle, and where a ratio is 1,400 to 1, and and explain to them that, okay, by doing so, you're going to have to spend 5 times what you might somewhere else in marketing. Your growth is going to be this. So the 10, 15 years down the road, your practice is probably going to grow X amount, a small amount. Or you could go 20 minutes outside of there, open to these areas that are underserved, and, you know, not have to spend as much money marketing, not have to do all the other things. You know, you're not having to cannibalize patients. You can spend money attracting them the right way. And then 10 years down the road, your practice is probably going to be worth 3 times what it would be if you went into the suburbs. Now, Mr. Young Guy, what makes sense to you? And to their credit, 95% of the time they pivot from wanting to be close to town to wanting to go back out and do a little further out or to an area that's underserved, because they realize, well, you know what, if I'm really busy, how many times am I going to be able to drive downtown and do the nightlife anyway? Maybe once on the weekend. It becomes more irrelevant, because they realize that when you show them the numbers and you think through location strategy and the business plan, they got too much at stake with all the debt plus they're borrowing $500,000 to start a practice or buy a practice or something like that. It's time to grow up. It's
Yeah,
time to
that's
be,
another thing that millennials really got to think about. How many dentists do I know that needed to be close to the ocean because they just love the ocean? And then you say to them, okay, how often do you go to the ocean now?
yeah, that's what's
And
hilarious.
they say
Yeah,
one time a year.
yeah.
Do you know, in my own dental office, half my employees have never gone to the Grand Canyon one time. And when you
Well,
go
that's
to the
sad.
Grand Canyon,
Yeah.
everyone there is from either Germany or Japan. And so, and then there's another really tough scenario is they're marrying their classmates in school, and mom's from one state and Billy's from another state. How do you, being a father of two boys, how do you coach young kids about close to family when family's in two different states?
It's difficult. I mean, it just kind of comes down to, sometimes you've seen this in your kids. Sometimes you have to let them make decisions, and there may be unintended consequences later. But
I actually decided not to have any children, and my four boys are taking it very hard. You know what my number one location strategy, and you're right, I will stop saying demographics and start going to you calling it location strategy.
Yes, sir.
You know what my number one location strategy is? You're $500,000 in debt. You married a girl in the class, she's $500,000 in debt, so you're $1 million in debt. So number one, leave the country. Just leave the country, go to Australia. And then when you go to Australia, there's no Mexican food. I mean, it's like, okay, there's no Mexican food here. So then you go there, you start a dental office, you have no debt, and you open up a Taco Bell or what's that one that you guys always eat at? Chipotle?
Chipotle, yeah.
Oh my God. Go to Sydney, Australia and open up a Chipotle. Now you have no debt, and Sydney's bigger than Phoenix. You'll probably own 10 Chipotles. You'll probably buy me a yacht for my 60th birthday. You'll make so much money. So how much debt do you think they should have when they should seriously start thinking about leaving the country?
I'm a big believer in no debt, but
isn't that the fast way to get rid of your debt? Just go to Switzerland?
Yeah, just go to Switzerland, yeah. Come find me, boys. But
yeah.
It's my heart breaks for these kids. I don't have enough background to opine on, the cost of school and stuff like that. I just know that when they come out of school with that amount of debt and that stuff starts to become payable, that is an incredibly high monthly nut to crack. And that's why our passion, frankly, is to help people in that situation make the right decisions up front, but make them with the best data and make them as quick as they can.
Well, here's the difference. 30 years ago, you could come out of school and had so little debt that you could make 2 or 3 serious mistakes out of the gate and still be fine.
Yeah.
But today, with their debt load, their first 3 decisions have to be the 3 best decisions they've ever made. There's no room.
That's correct.
There's no room for error, and you know that.
Yep.
Because you were a CPA, a CEO, a chief financial officer. Have you ever also thought about doing financial, being a certified financial officer for these dental offices too, going forward? Have you ever thought about going back to your CPA, CFO, CEO roots? Or are you going to stay with location strategy?
That is an interesting sidelight that I've kicked around expanding into, is taking what I know from my CPA and CFO and strategy side and helping dentists with a comprehensive overview of just life, of figuring. I mean, this is an important part of life, but you're right. There's so many other decisions that have to be made that. I have kind of kicked that around because I do have a passion for helping young kids and associates, really dentists of all ages, help make the right life decisions. And I'm a big believer in. I know there's a lot of stories out there about people that have had hard times and they get on the speaking tours and do things about how they got in trouble and how they got themselves out of trouble. That's great, but why not avoid getting in trouble in the first place?
Yeah,
that's where I come from. Is like, why go down that path in the first place? Let's do the smart things and avoid that. And
well, since you are so accomplished as a CPA and a CFO, when they're starting their de novo practice, do you really think they can run that on QuickBooks on desktop or QuickBooks Online? I mean, that's kind of a serious step down from Quicken on desktop. Do you agree with that or not really?
I think that
I'm giving away my age. I'm still on Peachtree. I mean, and if
yeah.
I told my two bookkeepers that we're going to switch to QuickBooks Online, they would hit me over the head with a frying pan so hard I would never remember that I asked them that.
First of all, I think QuickBooks can be okay by itself if you really are really smart and spend a lot of money, because the key is what people don't understand. I don't care if it's dentistry or any industry. You have to design your business system to capture the data you need to run your business or your practice. So that's really like, okay, knowing what data I need on the back end and then designing the systems to do that. Okay, you can probably do that reasonably well in QuickBooks, but I don't like it. I can't stand QuickBooks Online. I mean, it's nice, but it's so dumbed down from QuickBooks that it doesn't do any good.
People don't realize when they go public and say, I love QuickBooks Online. Okay, you just said you don't know anything about accounting.
Yeah. And it's a dumbed down version of QuickBooks from what I've seen. I may be wrong, but what I really would like people to do. It's the same people
who tell people that they have a 95% treatment acceptance plan ratio. It's like, really? You have a 95%? Really? So no one on earth ever had 65% and you have 95?
Yeah. Yeah. And actually.
So what software do you love then?
I'm just in general a big believer in the faster you can get on an overall integrated business system. And again, I'm not an expert on, the big packages that are out there. But I do know.
What do you mean? Say that better.
Oh, like I don't deal with them every day. Is it like Dentrix and those kind of big business systems and that kind of thing?
Right.
But I can tell you in other industries that I've worked in, and the concepts are the same, is that there's a cost benefit ratio you have to take into account. But for the most part, investing in the right business system that's integrated, that gives you efficiencies, that integrates not just financial information but customer data, all the other aspects into that. It may be more money up front, but it's going to save you a ton more down the road because you can have the flexibility and get what you need in order to manage your business. Okay, QuickBooks is going to be nice for kind of the nuts and bolts, but it's not an integrated business system that that if you're it's very difficult in QuickBooks to get statistics on, okay, how am I, if I break my types of services down into different segments, how do I analyze how profitable each of my segments of my business are? Okay, it's really difficult to do that. Whereas in some of the more advanced practices or software, if you set them up correctly, and that's the key, it's the design up front and understanding how you want to analyze your business, and then you design the accounting and the business systems to accommodate that.
But I think you're talking over their head. I mean, I think you're talking over their head because what you really said was the big ones, the Dentrix, the EagleSoft, they're not integrated management systems with accounting like you see in every franchise known to man, from Chipotle to Hyatt to Hilton, right?
Let me be clear. I've never used Dentrix or any of those, so I can't speak to that specifically. I'm assuming that they have financial stuff integrated in with them, don't they?
It's not linked to any accounting.
It's not linked to any accounting. Okay, I learned something new today. Well, if that's the case, then we need to start our own company and fix that.
Yeah, you're basically it's basically Stevie Wonder's at the wheel.
That's insane. I mean, I don't know why I've never heard that before, but that's unbelievable. And there's no other industry I know of that will have an operational package out there that's not integrated.
Well, you only find it in two industries routinely: healthcare and government.
That's true. You're right.
You'll never find it in another industry. Yeah. Food, agriculture, tires, cars, kitchen sink. No, it's special to dentistry.
I'm dumbfounded. I did not know that.
But what accounting do you use for your business? What accounting package? I mean, did you like Microsoft's? Microsoft back in the day bought Great Plains Accounting, but they renamed it Microsoft Dynamics GP, GP for Great Plains. It's an accounting package and enterprise resource planning. Did you ever try that, or what do you use in your office?
I worked at a place like that. We're small enough that QuickBooks works fine for us because.
So you're a CPA and you use QuickBooks
Oh yeah,
desktop.
yeah.
Okay.
Because I know enough about how I can manipulate that to get the data in terms of how REALscore is doing and the different reports and the different markets we serve. I can get that out of there, okay?
Mm-hmm.
But, most dentist office and most people don't have the same kind of ability and background that I do. So, they struggle with that. But, probably, unless you're a practice that has a lot of different locations and have the volume to support a big enterprise type system like that, probably dynamics and things like that, the cost of that is probably going to be overkill given the benefit from it. So that's an interesting question. I'll have to think about that a little further.
It's tough because the only reason you went to dental school for 8 years because you want to help people. You decided you wanted to be a surgeon. We only work in operatories. We work with our hands. We're doing surgery. We're getting you out of pain. We're fixing that. That's the love of it. But
Mm-hmm.
that's only 51% of it. 49% of it is HR and accounting and marketing and website design and SEO and motivating and leading your team and your staff. And that's the part. And a lot of them always complain that, well, they didn't teach that in dental school. Well, they didn't teach you your politics in dental school, your religion, your eating habits. I mean, it was a dental school. You were supposed to learn that somewhere else. The greatest letter I ever got back when I came out back in the day I think it was 1998. I came out with a 30-day dental MBA. It was 31-hour VCR tapes. Do you even own a VCR?
I still have a VCR DVD combo that I bought 4 or 5 years ago to take all my kids' videos and copy them onto DVD.
That's so funny. We just did that. We just sent all of our pictures to a company that put them all on a JPEG. Then we bought a big screen in the front room, and it's on a slideshow. And because you go to my mom's house, I mean, entire walls are just covered with millions of pictures, and this just looked a little more organized. But anyway, my sister, my oldest one, was a Catholic nun, and this priest was complaining about running the parish and all this stuff. And he said, I went to seminary school for 8 years, and all we did was study the Bible. And then I graduated, and they put me in this small town. I'm in front of a school. It's nearly bankrupt. The teachers are all upset. The parents are crazy. Yeah. Why didn't they teach me any of that in 8 years of seminary school? So my sister called me up and she said, can I have a copy of your tapes? Maybe there's not that much difference between root canals and running a church and a school. That priest wrote me a letter. Said that was the greatest thing that ever happened to him because it was the only 30 hours of training he'd ever got in his entire life. And there's no difference between the priesthood, a lawyer, a physician, a dentist. These kids come out and they're all gung-ho on the 51% of their art. They're not even remotely trained. And then a lot of people will complain that they're working at corporate and they say, well, I don't like this corporate. And I'm like, well, what do you not like about it? And they say, well, I want these 1,900 burrs to do one occlusal filling, and they'll only give me 3 burrs. I'm like, okay, well, I get that. That's a negative. I get that. But do you think you might be able to learn something working in a dental office that has 52 locations?
Yeah.
Do you think there's something other than focusing on your low selection of burrs? I mean, can you be downloading all their Microsoft forms and their HR policies and their dress codes and their marketing? And maybe you should go work at corporate for 2 years and get your dental MBA by saying, this guy, the owner who I can't stand, is running 25 successful dental offices, and then all the dentists running one dental office are struggling. Maybe there's something you can learn from that chain that has 50 locations, let alone 500 or 1,500.
Right. That's what I've told the associates when they're looking for a place to go. Okay, you're going because you need to get better and faster at your craft to make it scalable. Okay, because you come out of school, you know how to do it, but you haven't learned the tricks about how to do it better and faster so you can get more procedures done. But at the same time, you're also, I love your 51-49% quote. That's awesome because pay attention to, learn how he handles people, how he handles dispute resolution, negotiations, marketing, all those kind of things, because that's what's really going to make or break you when you decide to go off on your own. Learn that on his dime, as opposed to having to struggle and do that yourself. So that is an awesome point, Howard.
So I'm trying to think. Well, so what? I only got you for 5 more minutes. I can't believe this was the fastest hour ever. I actually went over it, so we're at 101 minutes. That was so fast. I just want to tell you this. I wish you get your friends on Dentaltown to go to your articles, and every time they comment on them, it takes it to today's exact topic, to share it to their social media, because I love my homies. I get it. I'd rather pull 4 wisdom teeth than take my 4 boys to Disneyland. I mean, I love it. And that's why I'm a dentist. I didn't want to be making a number 1, a number 2, a number 3, and a number 4. I made 1,000 of them in grammar school and another several thousand in high school. I get that, but they have to make this right decision. And you don't see any franchises that put 47 McDonald's on one corner, but if you go to 450 Sutter Street in downtown San Francisco, there's a building with several hundred dentists in one building. I'm like, have you ever seen several hundred Long John Silvers in one building?
Yeah,
it defies logic. Like, well, but it's a professional building. What does that even mean? It's an old. It's actually a very old, ugly building. It's a 100-year-old building. If that's professional, someone needs to get a wrecker ball and knock it over. I mean. So they say they want to be in a professional building. They say they want to be. They have all these cultural, mythological beliefs, and they need math. They need data. They need a location strategy. So I am your biggest fan. I'll do anything to help you get your magic on. Spread the word. Thanks for being on the Townie Perks. Thanks for coming on the show. Thanks for writing articles. But you homies out there, listen to this. You need to read those articles and share it to all your dental school classmates, all your friends working at Aspen and Heartland and all these people like that. And gosh darn it, if you get an A in demographics, is that a game changer?
It's unbelievable. It's if you get this question right, the location strategy question right, there's certain decisions in life where you got a fork in the road that will make a major impact. Okay, this is one of them, because getting the location right is not only it's basically going to affect your legacy. Not it's going to affect your family. It's going to affect everything that you do down the road, and
that's what frustrates me about my homies, because they got A's in physics and calculus. Usually, the dentist is the only one in the neighborhood that knows the difference between geometry and trigonometry. These guys can knock it out of the park. Someone just needs to take their head and lead the horse to water and say, well, you don't need an A in biochem. You need an A in demographics. You need an A in accounting.
Right. And the key here is we're not talking about the young kids. I know we're using them as examples, but the point I want to make is I don't care if you're 65 and have a dental practice, or 70 or 40 or whatever. Wherever you are in your life cycle, in your practice life cycle, location strategy, if you haven't looked at that in a long time, or even in the last year or two, then it's time to look at it, because you need to have a strategy, whether it's an exit strategy for your current practice, or a growth strategy to expand, or whatever, whether it's due diligence or anything.
Here's our next move. Here's what we're going to do.
Okay.
The Townie Perks isn't on the app. I just realized that. The next version of the app's coming out in a couple of weeks. We're going to add the classifieds. Okay. We need to add the Townie Perks, because there's 250,000 dentists on Dentaltown, but 50,000 have downloaded the apps. Guess which one downloaded the app? The millennials.
Yeah.
Guess who's on the desktop? All the guys with liver spots, like me.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
So you need to email me, Lori, and our head programmers, Ken. So Ken at Dentaltown, Howard at Dentaltown. I think is Lori at Dentaltown work, or does she Lori? Okay. So Ken, Howard, and Lori at Dentaltown. We need to add that Townie Perk section. But if you put a bunch of money into your development on that Townie Perks, you should be able to click that on the app, and they should see some kind of demo, kind of deconstruct the sales process. Instead of just going from REALscore to seeing the report, give a medium something away for free, something, so they get a better, clear, because I know they know the Krebs cycle, dude. They know how many ATP come out of glucose. If you give them enough away from free, once they see it, they'll get it.
Yeah. And that's true.
So we should. So the millennials are all on the app. So let's get the Townie Perks on the app, and let's get some type of demo from you on the app and on the desktop, so that when you go to Townie Perks, instead of clicking that and seeing the static REALscore, the menu stuff, there should be a YouTube video. There should be some video of you with your magic of showing them this is what a location strategy means.
Okay.
And
I love that.
Kind of the best ever deconstructed sales process. You know, these institutes will put a full page ad in Dental Town, and they'll think the dentist's going to read that, and that'll translate into them flying across the country and dropping $4,000 on a weekend course. The biggest thing you'll own is your home. And on an annuity, it's one of the best decisions you can ever do if you're a grandma. I mean, why give all your money to your kids when you could have a nicer lifestyle? And but you can't explain that on a 60-second commercial. So the whole commercial is just to get you to get the DVD.
Right.
And the whole purpose of the DVD is just to get you to call them and give them your address so they can tell you what the payment is. So it's the biggest decision you make. So they deconstruct the sales. First stare, second stare, third stare. I think we need to get the Townie Perks on the Dental Town app, and it needs to go from a static page to something video where you give away something for free, maybe a search or something, because I know my homies are so smart. If they just saw a really succinct something, they'll get it.
Yep.
They'll get it. And if they get it, because they can't, at $350,000 in debt, they can't make 3 bad decisions in a row.
No, and the beauty, and I fully support that, because I got to give these millennials, they get a bad rap sometimes, but I give them a ton of credit. I mean, 100% of the time when we spend a little time with them explaining what location strategy is, and the fork in the road that they're at, and the impact of the decision that they're making, they make wonderful choices. But there's education that needs to happen so that they know not only how important it is, but where they can get resources to help them make the decision on it. So, and that's where I think what you're doing. I'm really glad you didn't become a Sonic guy, because the legacy you're leaving with this, and the body of knowledge you're helping to create and everything like that. I just can't. It just amazes me. I'm not trying to suck up or blow smoke up your rear. This is just amazing what you're doing in terms of being able to help people and help your homies, as you call them, and so thanks for all that you're doing. But
just remember one thing: I still make the meanest onion rings on this side of the equator. You get them, you peel them, you make them cold, you cut them, you put them in ice water, and then you put them in flour, and then the flour. The trick is then you put them in ice cream milk. Then you put them in the what's that stuff called? What's the grain of the cracker meal?
Oh, okay.
And then you let them dry out until they're completely dry. Then you make sure the oil is 350 degrees, and you test it by just putting a little drop of water in there, and it's got to explode out of there. Then you sink those things, man. That I can't tell you. From age 10, you know how that's how we made them back then. There wasn't flash fry deals. I mean, when I was 10 years old, there was no frozen French fry. That wouldn't come along. And the McDonald's, that came from Idaho. That what was that guy's name? J.R. Simplot. That was years down the road, man. I mean, me and my 5 sisters, we probably peeled a gazillion pounds of potatoes and onions. That's all we did from age 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, just back there making French fries and onion rings.
Well, my first job at your age was riding my bike an hour away to a rundown building where a guy, he had 15 incubators in there, but my job was washing goose eggs.
Are you serious?
I am serious. When I was 12 years old, that was my first job.
What state?
Indiana.
Indiana raises
Northeast Indiana.
Geese for goose eggs?
Back in 1972, there was a guy that did.
Wow, that is amazing.
Yeah,
So you used to be a Hoosier.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And they finally discovered what a Hoosier was. Did you know?
I'm not going to repeat it.
It's not even a joke. It was on NPR. So back in the day when they were building railroads, they used to build them 5 miles a day. So when the whole crew's coming through your town, you wouldn't stop and say, well, I'm David, and I'm this Howard, and this is my son Zach. You would just say, if you work for Hoosier, you just say, I'm one of Hoosier's men. And this lady was sitting there writing the history of the railroad business, and she absolutely proved and found a man named Hoosier that laid a railroad all the way across Indiana. and the norm would have been, as you were blowing through their town 5 miles a day, I'm one of Hoosier's guys.
I never heard that.
Yeah, it was on NPR.
Said that way before.
It was NPR, and they said it was just the common culture that your name would be one of your boss's men, because you're never going to see this guy again.
Yeah, that's amazing. No, I lived in Indiana till I was 35, and then I've been in Ohio for 20 years. So,
well, you're working towards Phoenix, so you'll be here eventually.
We'd love to get out there. I'm telling you, I'd love to do that. I know you got a lot of great stuff.
Let's work together more on the things we talked about getting the Townie Perks on the app and getting a better explanation of what location strategy is, so we can tip these kids into making better, faster, higher quality, lower cost decisions.
Sounds good, sir.
All right, buddy.
Appreciate
Have a rocking hot day.